Step into a world of romance and mystery with Tamora Rose, where candlelight flickers against stone walls, secrets hide beneath silken gloves, and the most dangerous person in the room is often the one impossible to forget. There's something uniquely compelling about a villain who tempts as much as they threaten. Not the kind of antagonist who exists only to destroy, but the kind who unsettles us because somewhere, beneath the danger, we recognize longing, hunger, loneliness, a need to be seen. Historical romance has always understood this truth particularly well. In worlds shaped by rigid societal rules, inherited power, and emotional restraint, villains often become the characters who feel the most alive. They speak too boldly, desire too openly, break rules others are too frightened to challenge. And perhaps that is part of what makes them so magnetic. The traditional romantic hero offers safety, stability, protection. But the romantic villain offers transformation. To love them means stepping outside the boundaries of what is acceptable. It means risking reputation, security, even morality itself. The emotional stakes become sharper because the relationship is dangerous, not only emotionally, but socially and historically. The Duke with political influence can ruin lives with a signature. A pirate captain can drag a respectable woman into a scandal with a single whispered invitation. A ruthless queen can destroy enemies with a smile while privately aching for genuine connection. These characters hold power, and power changes the emotional atmosphere of every scene they enter. What makes historical villains especially fascinating is that they are often products of systems larger than themselves. In modern fiction, villainy can sometimes feel abstract, but in historical settings, cruelty is frequently woven directly into the structure of society. Wealth and gender expectations, inheritance laws, warfare, and class hierarchy all shape who survives and who suffers. A cold aristocrat might have been raised from childhood to view affection as weakness. A manipulative noblewoman may understand that charm is the only weapon available to her. A feared military commander may have learned long ago that mercy gets people killed. That context matters. It doesn't excuse harmful behavior, of course, but it deepens it. It allows readers to see not just the monster someone became, but the environment that created them. And once vulnerability enters the picture, fascination follows closely behind. One of the most enduring romantic villain archetypes is the fallen gentleman. This character carries the ghost of who they once were. Perhaps they were betrayed. Perhaps they lost everything. Perhaps they simply became disillusioned with a world that rewarded cruelty and punished softness. The fallen gentleman is often cynical, emotionally guarded, and dangerously charming. He walks into candlelit ballrooms with a reputation already trailing behind him. Society distrusts him, yet watches him constantly. And the heroine often sees something others miss. Not innocence, not purity, pain. This is the critical distinction. Romantic villains become compelling when readers understand the wound beneath the armor, the heartbreak beneath the arrogance, the fear beneath the control. Because emotionally, vulnerability is often more seductive than perfection. Then there is the power broker, the villain who understands influence better than intimacy. These characters thrive in royal courts or political marriages or even dangerous alliances. They know how to manipulate conversations, command loyalty, and weaponize information. On the surface, they appear untouchable. But emotionally, they are often isolated. Power creates distance. It teaches people to perform instead of connect. And so when someone enters their life who speaks honestly to them, who challenges them rather than fears them, the emotional tension becomes electric. What makes these romances work is not submission, it's recognition. The villain falls not because someone obeys them, but because someone finally sees through them. And of course, historical romance will always have a soft spot for outlaws. Always. Your pirates, your smugglers, your rebels, your highwaymen. These characters embody forbidden freedom. They exist outside society, outside the rules society insists must be obeyed. In many ways, they represent fantasy itself, escape from confinement, from expectation, from propriety. Loving an outlaw means choosing uncertainty over comfort. And emotionally, that can be intoxicating. The heroine who falls for a pirate captain is not simply choosing a man. She's choosing risk, adventure, defiance, a different version of herself. That is why these stories linger so strongly in readers' imaginations. The romance is not only external, it is transformative internally. Another archetype that remains endlessly effective is the Ice Queen or the Ice King. These characters are emotionally restrained to the point of intimidation. Their control becomes almost mythic. They rarely reveal vulnerability, rarely lose composure, rarely allow themselves softness. Which means when the walls finally crack, the emotional payoff feels enormous. Historical settings heighten this beautifully because emotional repression was often socially expected. Affection could be dangerous. Desire could destroy reputations. Vulnerability could be exploited. So when an emotionally frozen character finally admits love, fear, or grief, it feels earned. The tension leading up to that moment becomes part of the seduction. Readers are not simply waiting for passion. They're waiting for emotional surrender. Of course, writing romantic villains requires a little bit of balance. Danger cannot become glamorized abuse. Emotional intensity only works when the relationship still contains humanity, agency, and genuine emotional connection. What readers truly crave is complexity. They want characters capable of darkness who still retain the ability to choose differently. Characters whose love forces them to confront themselves honestly for perhaps the first time in their entire lives. That is why redemption arcs remain so powerful. Not because love magically erases wrongdoing, it doesn't, but because transformation costs something. A believable redemption requires sacrifice. Pride must be broken. Control must be surrendered. Sometimes power itself must be relinquished. And occasionally, redemption never fully arrives at all. Some of the most haunting historical romances are tragic precisely because the villains cannot escape who they are. Sometimes love comes too late. Sometimes ambition wins. Sometimes revenge matters more than tenderness. And strangely, those stories can feel just as emotionally satisfying as happily ever afters because they reflect something painfully human. Not everyone heals in time. A doomed romance can carry extraordinary emotional weight when both characters genuinely love each other but cannot survive the forces surrounding them. In Gothic storytelling especially, this tension becomes unforgettable. Castles, storms, curses, family legacies, ruined estates, all of it creates an atmosphere where desire and destruction become intertwined. Love becomes both salvation and catastrophe. What historical romance understands better than almost any genre is that attraction is rarely logical. People are drawn toward intensity, toward mystery, toward those who challenge the carefully constructed rules of their world. Villains embody temptation because they represent emotional extremes. They feel too much, they want too much, they risk too much. And in fiction, that emotional intensity becomes thrilling rather than frightening. Readers are not necessarily falling in love with cruelty itself. They're falling in love with passion stripped of restraint, with characters who force emotional truths into the open. A villain says the dangerous thing. A villain notices hidden desire. A villain changes the emotional temperature of every room they enter. That energy creates narrative gravity. There's also something deeply romantic about the idea of being truly known by someone the world misunderstands. Many villain-centered romances revolve around this emotional core. The heroine sees the humanity beneath the reputation. The villain, in turn, experiences acceptance they never believed possible. Not unconditional forgiveness, not blind approval, understanding. And for emotionally wounded characters, understanding can feel more intimate than love itself. Perhaps that is why these stories endure century after century, because beneath the corsets and the candlelight and the castles and the Gothic storms lies a timeless emotional question. Can love reach someone who has spent their entire life believing themselves beyond redemption? Historical romance answers that question in countless different ways. Sometimes with healing, or sometimes with heartbreak, sometimes with tragedy so beautiful it lingers long after the final page. But the fascination remains the same. We are drawn toward characters who stand at the edge of darkness and dare someone to follow them anyway. The romantic villain is never simply a monster. They are contradiction embodied, cruel yet vulnerable, powerful yet lonely, dangerous yet desperately human. And perhaps that is why readers cannot look away, because somewhere beneath the danger lies the fragile possibility that even the coldest heart still longs for warmth. Even the cruelest soul still wishes to be chosen. Even the villain, standing alone in history's darkest corridors, still hopes someone might reach for their hand. That's it for today. Tell me in the comments which type of romantic villain tempts you the most. The fallen gentleman, the outlaw, the ice king or queen, or the ruthless power broker. Until we meet again, may your days be filled with passion and just a touch of magic.